your investing game. We're not talking about chasing hot stock tips, but understanding what's going on behind the scenes, like inside your own mind. That's what we're diving into today, behavioral investing. Fascinating stuff, really. We're not perfectly rational calculators, right? Our brains have a mind of their own, especially when money's involved.
So true. Think of it this way. Traditional finance thinks we're all like Spock from Star Trek. All logic, driven by pure reason. But behavioral finance is more like, hold on, we're human. We have emotions, and those emotions, they influence our choices, even financial ones. Big time.
Exactly. Remember that time you just had to have that expensive gadget, convinced yourself you needed it, only to realize it was just a want, fueled by a flashy ad?
Been there. That's your brain's wiring, see? And it messes with investment decisions the same way.
Okay, so let's break down some of these mental shortcuts, these biases that trip us up. We'll get to why they exist later, but first, let's meet the usual suspects.
Let's do it.
First up, overconfidence bias. It's that sneaky feeling of, I've got this, even when, well, maybe we don't. It's like that stock you were so sure was going to skyrocket, but it didn't. Have you ever had that happen? I know I have.
Overconfidence, it can make you trade too much or take on way more risk than you should. It's that desire to be better than average, even though statistically not everyone can be right.
It's optimism on overdrive. We're wired to believe in ourselves. But with investing, a little humility goes a long way. Speaking of biases leading us astray, herd mentality. Anyone?
Ah, yes, the classic, everyone's doing it, so I should too. Remember the dot-com bubble? Everyone piling into internet stocks, even if they didn't get the business model? That fear of missing out, it's a powerful motivator.
And it leads to some irrational choices, let me tell you. Our brains think safety in numbers equals financial success, even when the logic, it's flawed. But here's a real head-scratcher: loss aversion. This one's all about how losing hurts way more than winning feels good.
True. We're hardwired to avoid loss, sometimes to a crazy degree. Think about it. Losing $100 feels way worse than the joy of gaining $100. So we hold on to losing investments for too long, hoping for a rebound. Or sell winners early, just to lock in a small gain.
So we're more scared of being wrong, of losing, than we are excited about winning big. Our brains are all about damage control, not maximizing opportunity.
Exactly. And this ties into some wild behavioral finance theories. Like prospect theory, it digs into why losses hit us harder than gains, explains that loss aversion we were talking about. It suggests our choices aren't always logical. It's about how we see those potential gains and losses in our heads.
That's so interesting. It's like our brains are playing tricks on us, warping how we see risk and reward. Now, anchoring bias, this one sneaks up on us all the time, I think.
Absolutely. Anchoring is getting stuck on the first piece of info we get, even if it makes no sense. Like when you see a crazy overpriced sweater, right? Then there's a slightly less crazy price and you think it's a deal, even though it's still overpriced compared to normal.
It's like our brains latch onto that first anchor, that first bit of info, and it just clouds our judgment.
Exactly. In investing, this is like refusing to sell a stock below what you paid, even if the company's changed completely.
We're trying to avoid admitting a mistake, even if moving on would be financially smart.
Right. And then there's another bias that can really mess things up. Recency bias. It's that human thing, overemphasizing recent events when making decisions. We forget about the long game.
It's like that old saying, out of sight, out of mind. We tend to overweight what just happened, even if it's not indicative of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Imagine checking your portfolio after a market dip and panicking, even though historically the market has always recovered. That's recency bias in action.
It's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment and forget about the long-term strategy. We've all been there, scrolling through our brokerage accounts during a downturn, feeling that wave of anxiety.
It's those moments that really test our understanding of these biases. But here's the good news. Just being aware of these mental shortcuts is the first step to outsmarting them.
It's like we're shining a light on those shadowy biases lurking in the corners of our minds, right? They can't hide from us anymore.
Exactly. Now we can start to recognize them and make more conscious, rational decisions.
Okay, so we've met the usual suspects, these pesky biases, but what can we actually do about them? Knowledge is great, but how do we apply it to our own investing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The good news is there are some really practical strategies we can use to counteract these biases. Think of it like this: awareness is like diagnosing the problem, but now we need the right treatment plan.
I like that analogy. So what's the first step in our behavioral investing treatment plan?
First and foremost, I can't emphasize enough the power of long-term thinking. Remember, Investing is a marathon, not a sprint. We need to zoom out and focus on the big picture, not get caught up in the day-to-day fluctuations of the market.
It's about tuning out that market noise and sticking to your investment plan. Easier said than done, especially when emotions are running high.
Absolutely. That's where having a solid plan in place is crucial. It helps you stay grounded and make rational decisions, even when the market feels like a roller coaster.
So how does diversification fit into this treatment plan?
Diversification is key. It's that age-old wisdom of not putting all your eggs in one basket, but it's incredibly relevant here. By spreading your investments across different asset classes, sectors, and even geographies, you're essentially building a buffer against volatility.
So if one area of the market takes a hit, the others can help cushion the blow, right? It's like building a financial fortress with multiple layers of protection.
Exactly. And diversification doesn't just mitigate risk, it also helps us avoid falling prey to some of those biases we discussed earlier. For example, if you're overly confident about a particular stock or sector, diversification forces you to spread the risk.
It's like having an internal voice of reason saying, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Precisely. Now, even with the best intentions, we're all human, and emotions can still creep in. That's where seeking professional advice can be invaluable.
So we've got our long-term plan, we're diversifying like pros, but sometimes we might need that extra support.
Absolutely. Sometimes, having an objective, experienced professional like a financial advisor can make a world of difference. They can help you see through your own biases, create a sound investment strategy that aligns with your goals, and provide that much-needed guidance when the market gets bumpy.
It's like having a personal trainer for your finances. They keep you accountable, motivated, and on track to reach your financial goals. And speaking of taking the emotion out of investing, let's talk about automation.
Now, automation is a game changer, especially for those of us prone to impulsive decisions. By automating your investments, such as setting up regular contributions to your retirement account, you're essentially putting your finances on autopilot.
I love that. It's like setting up those automatic bill payments. You don't even have to think about it. It just happens. And in this case, it could be the key to avoiding those emotionally charged investment decisions.
Exactly. When you automate, you're essentially telling your future self, hey, I know you might panic during a market dip or get caught up in the hype of a new trend, so I'm going to make sure you stay the course.
It's like we're creating a system that protects us from our own worst impulses. And speaking of those impulses, let's dive into some real-world examples where these biases played out on a grand scale, shall we?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at some cautionary tales and how understanding these biases can help us avoid similar pitfalls in our own investing journeys.
Let's rewind to 2008 and the financial crisis. That was a masterclass in herd mentality and panic, wouldn't you say?
It certainly was. Fear was rampant, and people were selling their investments left and right, driven by the fear that the market would completely collapse. And as more people sold, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, driving the market down further.
It's like that moment when someone yells fire in a crowded theater and everyone rushes for the exits, even if there's no actual fire.
Exactly. Now fast forward a few years to the rise and fall of the dot-com bubble.
Talk about a roller coaster ride fueled by overconfidence and speculation. It seemed like everyone and their grandmother were pouring money into internet stocks, convinced they would keep skyrocketing forever.
It was a classic example of the herd mentality and overconfidence bias at play. People saw others getting rich quick and jumped on the bandwagon without fully understanding the underlying companies or the potential risks.
And when the bubble burst, ouch, a lot of people got burned, learned some tough lessons about market hype.
Right. It reminds us that even with all this information, all these online forums, those old biases, still there, lurking.
Speaking of which, the GameStop short squeeze. That was wild. Everyone glued to their screens, watching the stock go nuts. Social media frenzy, FOMO. The works.
Textbook case, recency bias, herd mentality, sprinkle in some social media hype, boom, irrational market behavior on steroids.
Our brains are just wired to get swept up in that, aren't they? Especially now with news and opinions coming at us nonstop.
It's true. The 24/7 news cycle, social media, they've made these biases even stronger. We're only starting to understand how much.
So where does that leave us? We've uncovered these hidden biases. They can really mess things up, but we've also talked about ways to fight back.
Exactly. It comes down to self-awareness. The better we know our own minds, the better decisions we make with our money.
It's like that saying, know thyself, but
Yeah.
for your portfolio. It's not just picking the right stocks or timing the market perfectly. It's about understanding you, the investor.
Right on.
Yeah.
We all have these biases. It's part of being human. But by admitting that, we can make smarter choices. Choices that actually get us where we want to be financially.
Love it. So as we wrap up this deep dive into behavioral investing, one last thought. What bias do you think you're most vulnerable to? Think about it. Now, how can you use what we've discussed to outsmart it? Make those smarter investing decisions. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it's about your own mind. Until next time, happy investing.
Voices for the world's awake. Challenges we vow to take. Hearts on fire, never fake. Life's a rhythm, let it quake. Turn it up, every sound. We're not lost, we are found. Feel the fire all around. Lift your voice, stand your ground. Turn it up, every sound. We're not lost, we are found. Feel the fire all around. Lift your voice, stand your ground. Passion pulses through our veins, through the highs and through the pains.